Hello everyone, this is DD1 here, and today I'm going to be doing a very special video. So, I've not been into the game Funkeys, as in playing the game, for a while. I was doing other things, I was focusing on other games, however, it to this day is in my top 3 for video games. I just think the design is incredible, the concept of the figures going into the game came before Skylanders. Just the art design, the music design, the mini games themselves, the character design, it's all simply incredible in my opinion. And while I have made strides in the physical aspects of the game, as in collecting figures, I have an unreleased figure, I have an art show figure, I have a plush that I got signed from a former employee when I met him. I have a t-shirt, I have a lot of stuff that I've done there, but I haven't really touched the game in a while because it's been hard to actually modify the game. Until a while back, someone that goes by the name of Lako or Lako. At the time I'm not sure which way to pronounce it, but I'll just say Lako for the sake of this video. Lako created a program called OpenFK, which allows you to play the game on a 64-bit system without Flash Player, which no longer is functional, and also without the hub. And there is a Funkeys selector program that you can use to just kind of pick a Funky before you launch the game, and then you're that Funky throughout the gameplay. The only downside with that, of course, is if you wanted to go through something like the Hidden Realm, that is not really possible. But recently, I was introducing a friend of mine to the game, and I decided maybe I should try and get back into it because I wanted to get it functional again to demonstrate to my friend, and I also just got kind of hyped because of that. So I got it working with OpenFK, and then I started wondering, because I've been modding the Lego classic games for a few years now, so I was wondering, can I apply that knowledge to this game? So I asked Lako about some of the file formats, and he said there's actually a converter tool to where you can take the gibberish code and make it readable and then switch it back. And so through that, I have done a lot of things in a short amount of time to improve the game. So I'll just go ahead and list off a few things that I've done. I have made Talk a playable character in the game. And if you don't know who Talk is, it's that speedometer character from the Speed Racer Zone. And there were a few things that I did there. First of all, I set them up in the code to be actually common, rare, and very rare variants. They are actually listed off as Talk 1, 2, and 3. So I set that up. I made it so that when you are loading the character and you try and go into a zone, it'll actually say, Talk up there on the top of the screen saying you can't get in. I also made it to where they're just a regular Funky, and you can find them in Funky's Town. You can find them, in the train station. And I just figured, why not? Because they're not a Speed Racer original character, and you see them by the entrance to the Royalton Racing Complex, so why not, right? Why not have them in there? Another thing that I did is I brought Bandit back into the game in multiple respects. That was a little more difficult because there were no item IDs, if you will, or Funky IDs for Bandit. They had been erased, but the individual models for Bandit were still in the folder. So I created some new IDs. Wasn't sure how that was going to work, but I figured it out. And I went through all this different stuff. I made it to where Bandit was possible to spawn in Funky's Town, etc. And so because of that, Bandit is now walking around in Funky's Town as would be any other Funky. And Bandit has about the same accessibility right now as UB, and that's just because there's not a specific Bandit structure for Bandit to go in at this time. Maybe in the future, though. But that has all just been incredible. It's things I've always wanted to do, and I just locked in, and it's happened. As some of you watching this video may know, Bandit actually had an entry in the Funky Codex that was removed from the game. And in fact, it was never actually visible as long as the codex was functional, as long as I can recall. So there is no official description, or lore I should say, for Bandit that I have. However, the developers left the image file for the codex in the game files. So naturally, I went ahead and added Bandit back into the codex using the same page number that was listed, and it worked perfectly. Now, the lore is just copy-pasted from something else, just like the dialogue you may have noticed for Talk and Bandit. Eventually, I will try and write some things for those, but at this time, they are just kind of placeholders. Another little change I've done is I made it to where when you go into the henchman building in Funkeys Town, you see all the different variants of henchmen. You see all the colors as well as the henchman 2.0 rather than just the regular red henchman. The other henchman variants, I still haven't quite figured out how to make it to where you can rob with them. I think it might work in zone specific areas, I don't remember, but I do know that you could use the red henchman in Funkeys Town to rob, and you can't do that with the other colors or the 2.0. So at this time, that has not been figured out, but they do show up in the game room. Now, one last thing I do want to showcase in this video is, for those who've played the game, you might recall that in the Royalton Racing Complex, you could get hit by a car, and then you'd have to play a little mini game to avoid losing your money. However, there would be an invisible shadow that would spawn in. You would hear the sound of a henchman approaching, and a shadow would come up, and upon contact with you, it would start the car game. It was always assumed that this was the Thug character, sometimes known as Cruncher Block, although I think that Cruncher Block might have been another character in the movie other than the Thug himself. So we'll just say Thug. But Thug and EP Royalton are going to be released along with Tejo and the Pinball Speed Racer in an adventure pack that couldn't come out before the license was lost. So they just had an invisible shadow walking around, although from looking in the files, I think it's entirely a bug. Obviously, it would have been intended to be Thug, but it doesn't seem like they're actually trying to put Thug in there. It seems like they just made it to where you would be impacted by the cars, but then some kind of hard coding made it to where there had to be a henchman that would appear every so often if there was like a henchman kind of minigame. But I went ahead and set it up to where it uses the ID for Thug instead of just a shadow. At the time, it is just Thug's face, because that exists from the Racer X minigame. When myself or someone else really gets into making custom funky models, then this can be upgraded to an actual Thug model, and then the character will be fully in the game as originally intended. And with Thug also, I worked on the pop-up window, which does actually function. They had made the image for the Thug pop-up when you'd first place the figure on the base, just like with the other adventure pack figures. There was written out dialogue and an image, but the window would only last for 5 seconds, and there was no audio. So what I did, and I know this is maybe a hot take, I made an AI model of Mayor Sayso, and I fed it the text from the little pop-up window for Thug, albeit with a little bit of revision because the grammar was not the best on it. If they did release the adventure pack, then they might have updated that text. It was just kind of put in there as maybe a placeholder. So I fixed the grammar, I got Mayor Say So saying it. And when I first tested it in this save file, unfortunately I had not fully figured out how to make the audio work, so here I am showing it to you in the game room. But nonetheless, it does function.
I thought I smelled a foul. Shouldn't you be at the Royalton Racing Complex collecting racing fees for your boss? Even though Royalton may charge fees to Funkeys in the complex, Funkeys Town is free to all. Despite being under your boss's protection while in the complex, while in Funkeys Town, you are being watched.
But yeah, guys, so this is it for now. I have done some work with Hidden Realm. I put an Oni outside of the dojo because that makes sense. Instead of just a Yang there is actually a character model for Oni that was not used in any capacity in the game. So that's there. I have tried to make it to where you can actually play as Kane or Oni in Funky Fighters. I have not yet figured that out. But then again, this has all happened in like just one big, locked in grind. And it all happened over the course of a few hours once I figured it out. Well, once Leiko showed me how to convert the file formats and whatnot. But yeah, this is pretty huge. There's a lot of things that everyone has always wanted to see, and it's so cool that I was able to implement this. I'm sure if someone else has done some of these things before and I'm not aware of it because I've been kind of out of touch, I apologize, but I haven't found anything, so I just wanted to make a video showing this. Eventually I will likely in the Discord or somewhere else, maybe in the description of this video, I may eventually put a download link for these revisions, and that way you can play with them as well. But just overall, a lot of things that should have been but weren't, and a few other fixes as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe for more Funkeys content. I know this has become a LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga channel for a while, but maybe you like this game as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.